Got it.
Hello and welcome to Avini Vibes. Tonight is Thursday, March 28th, 2024. I'm your host, Christine Rolando, with my co-host, but she's off camera tonight because she's with us. Thank goodness. When I got the text and she might not be here, I said, oh no, I need Carol Witt. Carol is my right-hand person here. Couldn't do it without her and couldn't do it without Chip or any of you. So thank you so much for being with us at Avini Vibes tonight. It's a place that we come to grow, we come to know, we come to learn, we come to hear about the most amazing products on the face of the earth. We're here to help people heal, help people get well, and remember, we do not make any medical claims. So we're here to share and again learn from each other. And thank you, Chip, for being with us. Always, we're very, very grateful. Now, what I do want to ask you, I want you to raise your hands if you know the answer to this question. This is a trivia question. Does anybody know the name of the company that had marketing or tagline called the Big Gulp? Does anybody remember that? If you do, the Big Gulp. Uh-oh, I see one. I see two. All right, well, that's our trivia question for tonight. I see three. So that's our trivia question for tonight. Tonight we have a trivia question, and what about the Big Gulp? Well, I'm going to introduce you to somebody that's pretty special, and he's our guest tonight. And while we were just sitting here getting ready for this call, we were really feeling how blessed we were because we're all the way from one side of the country to the other, from New York and all the way from California, from San Mateo, California. We have Joe Gershaneck. How's that, Joe? I always
Perfect.
watch people's names. I don't know why, but I do.
Perfect.
But I'm so glad that you're with us. And Joe is classically educated. He's actually a professional. He's known for the ability of his innovation. And I've known Joe for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. Met him through Avini. But this is a man that accomplishes his task. He sets forth an effort, and guess what? He does it. And he's been a manager. He's been just has the ability to communicate. He is a gift, and he also has the gift to lead teams. So Joe's with us tonight as a very, very special guest, and I'm going to let him share his story because Joe is the innovator and very much involved in the creation of what we know as the Big Gulp. So welcome, Joe. Thanks for being with us tonight. Come on down. And
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
we want to
Well,
hear about your
hear about my story.
story,
Well,
okay?
yeah, my story was when I went through college, I wanted to create a product or create something that would go international and worldwide. And that was written down in my goals when I graduated with my MBA. And I had the great fortune of starting a career with 7-Eleven, and I progressed through the various steps and ultimately got to be the marketing manager of the Northern California division. We stretched all the way from Bakersfield to Oregon, Reno and Tahoe, King City to Oregon. We had 512 stores. The total gross volume, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, was more than $500 million per year. So we were doing quite well. And I'll go forward, then I'll go back. But unfortunately, in 1992, 7-Eleven went through bankruptcy. I tried everything on my part to do all that I could to make sure that that wouldn't happen. But unfortunately, there were other divisions that weren't as fortunate or wasn't as skilled, and 7-Eleven ultimately went through some bad times. But part of the things I have done with 7-Eleven, underneath the innovation, I was on the team that helped create the Big Gulp. We looked at various things to market ourselves differently than any other convenience store. And at that time, McDonald's was only selling a 12-ounce cup. That was it. That was the biggest cup. But when we came out with 32-ounce, people were blown away. And we did some product sampling, and the name Big Gulp came up because it was something that was large and demonstrated a visible name and a viable name and a catchy name. And so that was one of my strong accomplishments. Then I reached out on my own to do two other major things. If you've ever brought your child to a 7-Eleven on July 11th, quote, 7-Eleven Day, and got a free little Slurpee, I created that as the second product, or that was an individual product that's taken internationally. When you go to 7-Eleven, you can have a Pepsi and a Coke. You can't go anywhere else to have a Pepsi and a Coke. That was originally something that I created, and again, that's gone internationally. So I was in a position where I was riding high, and then unfortunately things presented a challenge because 7-Eleven was doing a consolidation, going from a marketing team to just a location. If you spread enough of them out all over the place, people will go shopping. So I saw the writing on the wall, so to speak, and a friend of mine invited me to a business meeting, and I went to the business meeting, and that was when I was 42 years old, I guess. And this may be hard to believe, but some people lead a sheltered life. And I had never heard of Amway, I never heard of Shackley's, never heard of Herbalife, never been to a business presentation, knew nothing about network marketing. But empirically, as a businessman, I saw that doing business in a network marketing way made the most sense. With 7-Eleven, I had a $7.5 million per year advertising budget. And I'm sometimes wondered if anybody ever heard anything. But yet you have somebody talking to somebody and it goes like wildfire. Then I also knew what the markup levels were because we were a manufacturer and a retailer, and we're also a distributor. So I knew each one of the steps. So when there's commentary that's made that, you're eliminating the middleman, yes, we are. So I immediately saw that this made sense to me. And I started with my first company and had tremendous success with it. I was able to replace my executive income in a little over 4 years. And that was when I first met Rick. And Rick is the originator of several of the products that company was with. And in fact, sometimes he makes commentary on it. And how that ties into why I'm with Avini is the fact that the things that he did back then had not been updated since the mid-1990s. And when I found out through my friend Kyle that Rick was involved in creating a company, this new company, that was updating several of the products that were around, that sold billions of dollars worth of volume over the years, and bringing in new innovative products that I hadn't heard of before, which specifically was the Cell Defender. Now, the Cell Defender caught my attention because I was, unfortunately, at 68 years old, I was like the two of you taking 0 pills, had no issues whatsoever. I was my high school body weight. I was still water skiing. In fact, I got up barefoot water skiing at 68. And then all of a sudden, the doctors were noticing that I had some swelling in my legs. And to make a very long and sad story short, through a year worth of going to doctor after doctor after doctor, I finally got to one that said, I think you need to go to a nephrologist. And you would have thought that they had thought of that earlier. And that's when I was informed that my kidneys were being attacked in an autoimmune function, attacking my kidneys and basically destroying them. And so I went from 68, carefree, everything working perfectly, to on dialysis in a little over a year. And dialysis is tough. Laying there in proverbially a dentist chair for 8 hours because I went to the longer, slower dialysis because I did the analytics. That keeps your body stronger. So I knew if I wasn't strong, I wouldn't be a potential candidate for a transplant.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
How many days a week did you have to go to dialysis?
3 days a week.
Oh my goodness, for 8 hours a day. Wow.
And that's 8 hours on the machine.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'd have to leave my house at around 4 o'clock, to get up to the place and doing the dialysis, and then I would get home about 3 a.m. in the morning. And that certainly takes the wind out of your sails. But I knew that if I went to what a lot of people do, which is still good, I never want to apologize for what people do or say it's not the right way, but the 4-hour treatment is a lot faster and it's more strain on your body. And I wanted my body to be as strong as possible to be a viable candidate, especially at my age. And so I was qualified as an excellent candidate, but then I was told I needed to be on dialysis in the Bay Area, 7 to 10 years. And I knew at the end of 7 to 10 years, there was no way I was going to be a transplant patient. Then I began to look around the entire United States, and you can go to a different city as long as you can get there within 5 to 6 hours. So I reached out and found cities that I could go to. And I got blessed by God in about a year and a half to have a transplant come up for me. And so I had a transplant at 70. And I've shown Chip a picture that I have on my website. That picture was 6 months after my transplant on my Facebook website. And so those were the things that came about. I stayed with my first company for quite a few years, and you saw my resume that I think that Christina shared. The company had great products, but they had a management challenge. They had a management challenge because the founders of the company decided to sell out, and the persons who took over the company, who had no idea about network marketing, didn't understand it, and actually messed it up terribly. So the company that I was with and proud of became a shell of itself. So I had to look at other different things to take a look at as a balancing out of my income. And so I went into network marketing part-time for about 10 years, looking around and seeing what was out there, looking for another magical company, looking for a company that had leadership that knew what they were doing, looking for a company that had finances, looking for a company that had fine products. Tried a couple, seemed to be there, but really wasn't. But then when Kyle told me about Avini, and I started to go through the check boxes, I went, wow. It's almost like a revisiting of something that was a blessing to my life. And the new blessing of my life is Avini. Now, some of you who are on the call that are not distributors or have never been in network marketing, I'd like to address a couple things for you. First is, you don't know what you don't know. And the good news is when you find things out from Avini, you're going to find things out that you're going, oh, they took care of that. Oh, they took care of that. Oh, that's fair. With other companies, usually what ends up happening is you go out and all of a sudden you see that there's all these little tricks that have to happen, these magical keeping the bowling ball, not the tennis ball, the bowling balls in the air to keep it balanced. And then all of a sudden you see that the compensation plan gets tweaked, not to the betterment of the distributor force, but to the person who's running it. And people create companies for different reasons. Some people create it because they're altruistic and believe in helping people. Some people create companies because they're egotistical and hedonistic. If you're associated with somebody that falls into that vein, where do you think the focus is going to be? It's not going to be on the distributor force. It's going to be on that person. And that person's going to be taking advantage of everything that he could. So when I began to investigate it further and saw that miraculously Rick Deitch was the product formulator, I signed up actually at 11:47 p.m. after I finished talking with Kyle. And I signed up on November 11th, 2022. Now, I wish I was in Europe at the time, because then I could say that I signed up on 7/11/22 because they flip around the dates. They put the date first instead of the month first. But that's when I started. And so I've been with the company for a year, and everything that's come out in that year's period of time has exceeded my expectations. I love the Cell Defender. And one of the things that I found out about the Cell Defender is the reality check of detoxing the body is something that's mystical to many people because they don't realize the toxic level that they have in their bodies. Being a dialysis patient and then being on a kidney transplant, I know exactly what my toxicity load is because every month I have to do a blood workup. You know that thing that everyone gets worried about once per year when you go to the doctor and you go, well, we were just talking about that earlier about, well, I'm hoping the results come out good. And there's stress that time that you're waiting. That happens to me monthly. It happens to me monthly because I never know, because with the autoimmune disease, it could start up again and take back over. So I have readings that show that when I started on Cell Defender, my level of toxicity as measured by the kidney's capacity to remove toxicity. Chip's the expert in medical things, but there's a term called creatinine, which is the toxicity level that the kidney has not been able to take out. it dropped down more than 10%. I was astounded because what was happening is the toxicity was being able to take out, and my one kidney, because you don't get two, you only get one. It's very rare. There's 100,000 plus people on the list to get a transplant, and there's less than 30,000 people that get it per year. And many people die on the list because they never come up with a suitable match. So I knew that I needed to protect that one kidney because the odds are I would never get another one. And the less strain I have on the kidney, the better it can function, the less toxicity, the less strain. And am I a happy guy? I am a happy guy, to say the least, because things have just made me feel phenomenal. And the Avini fiber, the Avini fiber is the second generation of something that Rick created back in the 90s. And I'll tell you a funny story. I went up and had the privilege of attending the Sacramento regional where Rick was up there, Neil was up there, and Doug was up there. And on the way up, my wife was asking me, well, what are you going to be talking about? So I tell her, but, going to something new, she wanted to know. So I got into a discussion about, the Avini fiber, because she's been taking that, so how it works, got into discussion of the cell defender, got into this discussion on homeopathic pain medicine and what a homeopathic medicine is. And we're sitting there in the audience, and Rick must have heard what I was saying because he was saying the exact same thing I was saying to her on the way up. And she's looking at me and going, huh? How'd you know that? Well, because I know that. I know that. And so that's a phenomenal growth. Homeopathy, our plus relief, what that can do for us. What that can do for us is phenomenal. And one of the things we used to quote, because Rick was involved with the homeopathics with the other company, is, quote, who was on homeopathics? I'll give you one of the number one people that we used to quote. Queen Elizabeth used a homeopathic surgeon. And so you take a look at how many years did she make it and how many years was she functioning? You kind of take your model after somebody's a successful model. And so obviously we have a situation there that homeopathics is not going to be hurting our body with what the other pain medicines are doing. Now, I have to admit to you that am I on meds now? Yes, I am on meds now because once you're on a treatment for kidneys, you have to depress your immune system. And so in doing so, I have to be on meds. I prefer not to be on meds, but I have to be on meds. And so one of the things that I have to do, and which I was extremely proud of, and I want all of you to know, and I'd urge you to do the same, is I went to my doctor because in my previous company, I used to have a lot of doctors and dentists working with me. And one of the deductions that we all had together is never ask a doctor, do you think this will work? Because if they don't know anything about what you're talking about, they're going to say, no, it's just one of those things. But if you approach them and say, do you see any potential harm in me taking this particular product to see how it works? At which point in time, they'll come back and usually say, well, I look through the ingredients. There's nothing weird in it. There's nothing that I can see that would be a contraindication to the meds you're taking. Go ahead and try it. That's how I introduced my doctor to the original fiber product. Because when I went to the original fiber product, my cholesterol was running about 160, which to most people in the room would probably be ecstatic about that number. Well, I went on the fiber product, came back a month and a half later, my cholesterol was 125. And my doctor said, what? What did you do? What happened? I want you to take another test. I said, remember the thing I told you about? And at which point in time, she became a distributor and was dispensing it as a first choice people that used before they had to go on to lipid-lowering medicines. So a lot of different things. I'll be honest, I'll default to chip at any day. I don't have any heavy background in the mushrooms. I've heard they're phenomenal. I don't have any background in the silver. I've heard that's phenomenal. And I'm not using that one at this point in time, but like I know that there are people having phenomenal successes, but I can't speak to it myself. Because what we do is we share what we know, and you ask for help when you don't know. And that's also part of, why I'm wanted to chat with you tonight, because I hope some of the tidbits I'm sharing with you will make a difference. One of the other tidbit I like to suggest to you is when you're writing down a list, there's what's known as the chicken list. Uh, those are people that you know are phenomenally successful in everything and anything they do. And you say to yourself, if I just had them, but then you're going, God, can I please, show you something? So you don't want to do that because they're up here proverbially, and you might be here, or you might even be there. I was one of those persons that was on numerous people's chicken list when I was with 7-Eleven. And nobody asked me, if I had an interest in network marketing, except a close friend of mine. And she didn't even ask me. She did the normal thing. I'm looking at a business proposition. And I said, okay, fine, I'll check it out with you. So don't be afraid to ask a chicken list person, because you don't know what's going on in their business. You know what's going on in their lives. They may be in a position that they can modify their skill set to involve themselves in networking. Maybe part-time, maybe full-time. You don't know. It's up to them. But when there's not an opportunity for them to come back and say something to you, say yes or no, then there's no opportunity for them nor for you. So don't ever hesitate on calling one of those chicken list persons. And what you want to always do is have one of your teammates, one of your senior teammates like Christine, Ed, be there in the background to help you. Because remember, when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know. And so in looking at some other things, what do I see with Avini? And I'm looking at the time, and I'm actually pretty good on time, aren't I? If in looking at Avini, there is what's referred to as the growth pattern of a network company. And one of the things that attracted me the most is number one, the products, number one, the compensation plan, which doesn't have any hidden things, but also the quality of people. I forgot to mention what type of person Neil is, or what type of person Rick is, and Doug is. They don't need 3 Ferraris in their garage. They don't need a G2 plane to fly around. They're real people. Some of the people I met were not real people. I don't know where they came from, but they were not real people. So when I got into that first company, I got in a little bit late, and I say a little bit late, but everybody that's on this call is in the perfect spot. Perfect spot. Because what happens with a company that's grow, it starts out and it's very, very slow moving. Because remember, it's word of mouth, and you only have one person saying something, you may have 2 persons saying something. And after 2 to 3 years, they hit what's referred to as the momentum phase. When they hit the momentum phase, there's so many people talking at so many times, the multiplier takes it up like a rocket ship. And then it plateaus in stability. And when the company has all those pieces put together, the right management, the right products, the financing, all of that, that momentum phase creates a long-time residual income. With the reality check that most people today haven't saved enough or haven't had enough good fortune to invest that things that could make them financial, wouldn't it be a good idea to have some residual income? Wouldn't it be a good idea that you come with a company that the old proverbial, the rising tide lifts all ships? So even if you're along for the ride, and even if you don't have a super big business, that little business will grow and compound just because it's going to. So I feel absolutely excited about Avini. As I said, I think you've heard. I consider it a privilege to be on the call tonight. I consider it a privilege to be with the company and with all of you.
Joe, let's give Joe a hand, because I'll tell you, Joe, amazing story. And you speak from experience, which is so beautiful. And you speak from your heart. You speak the truth. So I know that you're on a very tight schedule tonight, but I want to just applaud you for being, taking that step and being here. But I wanted Chip to jump in before you go. All right.
Sure.
And then
Well,
I
I'm
know
not sure we can let him go. I mean, don't we get
I
a say in that,
promised
right?
them.
Okay. So when you talk to Joe, one of the first things you realize is that he is a career level network marketing professional. He thinks on that marketing level, the creativity, what's going to be big, what's going to go international, and he can take two words and turn it into an international event, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that's going there. I got to get one thing out of you before you go. And it may seem strange. I mean, I've got a whole lot about dialysis stuff, so you may have to come back and listen to the tape if you really got to go in a minute, because I want to talk about a lot of the things that you said. One of them being, if you stay on dialysis for 8 hours, when the blood goes over to the machine, it comes back in a few minutes, and the blood's all clean. So why do you sit there for 3.5 or 4, or in his case, I'd never heard of someone that sat 8 hours before, but there he is, 8 hours. And what's the reason? And the reason is your tissues are still dirty and they give. So he would get cleaner by waiting and giving longer than he would if he did a shorter time.
Hmm.
And then I had the thought, you can't really speed up how quickly the tissues give the toxins to the blood. And then the next thought I had was, or can you? Because when you use Cell Defender ahead of time, it's going to sequester some of the toxins within itself. That then is really easy for the machine to take out. And so you've actually accelerated or made better use of the time. So this concept of making better use of the time is gigantic. And the other thing I really wanted Joe to hear in case he doesn't come back and listen to his own call again, I live right on, if it was 1850 and I looked out the window, there'd be wagon trains going by. I'm on the side of the river where it's the Mormon Trail. I walk across the river and it's the Oregon Trail. And some of the people seriously did, load a whole bunch of big furniture, when they left Independence, Missouri in the back of those wagons, thinking they'd love to have it when they got to Oregon. But if you're the oxen out front and they get this far and the plains start to break up and you can see the Rocky Mountains on a clear day out in front of you. Now, remember, I want you to look at this from the point of view of the oxen representing the kidneys, the liver, all of your functions. Mm-hmm. And somebody thinks, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and set the piano out now. See, that's how the products work. If you're the oxen up front, the very next step is easier, and every step after that is easier too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then you get these effects where all of a sudden he goes in and his tests are better. So it may not be so much that you all of a sudden got more capacity. It's just that you're using it better because you took some of the things that were very difficult and made them easy, and that lets it turn back. And every single thing about us is that way. So the thing I had to ask you before you go, if indeed, and Joe described to me one time, if you're landing in a jet at the airport and you're looking out the window, you'll see a lake, and that's where he lives and skis.
Yes.
So, and I want you guys to just hear him speak for a second, a little bit more. I'm going to milk one thing out of him. If you have barefooted, well, nature's way of testing a pilot is landing. Nature's way of testing a barefooter is how do you start? So I'm going to ask you to tell how you started on barefoot when you took a ride, and describe to us that process. Whatever start you did or whichever one you choose, tell them a little bit what it takes to start on a barefoot ride.
I actually went off the boom the first time to figure it out. And so I barefooted off the boom. And what happens is you're literally hanging on to the outside of a pole that's sticking outside of a ski boat. And the speed that you have to go at is 20 miles an hour plus 10% of your body weight. So at that time, I was 190. So that meant I needed to do 39 miles an hour. And so I would literally hang on to this bar and I would have to crunch up and throw myself around, plant my feet. And the first time they didn't plant correctly, and and then when you drop off, you have to drop off to your butt. Otherwise, you'll face dive and then you skid on your butt. So it was an invigorating experience, to say the least. I'll be PG, but you know what happens when there's a lot of water around. I had a good enough suit that I didn't have that happen, but it happens to a lot of people along the way. But yes, it's an experience. Chip is a much more accomplished water skier than I am, especially in barefoot. But I would say I'm pretty good.
Well, I love that description, and you know, at the little lake up here we have state rules for the fishery, and that deal of not having tight enough shorts and going down on your butt when you do a barefoot fall. You have to return all walleye to the lake that are smaller than 19 inches long. And it feels like there might be some of them in there. That's an extremely sobering experience to have that happen. That's cool. So what he just described, with the assistance of the boom, before that was invented, you know, so way back in the late 1950s, when there was first 100 horsepower engines, you know, the kids I was around got a hold of one of those Mercuries, and they heard that such a thing was possible, and so we're stepping off of slalom skis and stuff like that. It's like being on the end of a fly swatter. What Joe just described and how quickly he was able to learn is really important, because and you listen to Joe, the things he's learned about marketing, the things he's learned about network marketing, things that we paid dearly to learn that maybe took us years. And I'm talking about he and I and whoever the other old heads are around here. We can now often teach you in minutes.
Yes.
Yep. So that's the point. And you know, it's wonderful to see you there. How are you doing right now? I mean, you look great to me. How's it going for Joe? That boy. Awesome.
Awesome. Look great, right?
Thank you
It's
so
kind of
much.
it's kind of like we grew up together, and the first time we met, it's like, oh, well, you're like me. Oh, you're kind of like me. Oh, that we kind of think alike. You know, so it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
What are the chances of us having two barefooters on one call? Let me tell you. People that just joined us are like, what are barefooters? But
I run
anyway,
barefooters.
Joe, before we let you go, does anybody else want to ask Joe a question or make a comment? Because he's going to have to hit the road, and then I know I'm going to have Alan share a little bit. So anybody will raise your hand, or
Joe, I just want to say thank you for being our guest tonight. You were amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome
Thank you very
story,
much.
Joe. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank
Joe,
you.
how many times do you take the Cell Defender?
I take it a minimum of 2 and sometimes 3 to 4.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Joe.
and I have a question. So I thank you so much. You were very clear, and I loved how you did your presentation. And are you available for conversations? I didn't get enough of you. I think we all need to like have you back or something so we can ask you questions. I'm cognizant to the fact that you said you had a hard 5 a time and you were going to leave, but it's just so much I want to ask you.
Well, let's do this, Novella. Great idea. Joe, why don't we have you back either the 4th or the 18th of April? How would that be? Okay, I have a Spanish-speaking gal gonna come on in a couple weeks, so I'll talk to you, Joe, directly. We'll have you back, and we'll go from there. Novella, great idea.
Not a
So,
girl,
Thank
Novella.
you.
yeah,
Thank you so very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great
Joe.
job, Joe.
Thank you,
Great
Joe.
job,
See you.
Joe.
See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a privilege to know
Oh.
Joe. I've known him for the last couple months, and he's just such a treat, a gift. He's a man of wisdom, so really cool. Yesterday, he shared pictures of where he lives. He lives literally by San Francisco on the water on this beautiful bay. He showed me pictures right out his door, and just lovely. But with that, Alan Way. Alan, why don't you join us? I want Alan to talk to us, another man that's been with us for a while here. And Alan, you unmute. And I just would like you to jump in and share a few minutes of what's going on in your life and Barbara's life. You're still muted. There you go. How's Barbara doing these days? And how are you?
I'm doing fantastically well. The Lord has blessed me wonderfully. Barbara's still struggling in some ways, and she used to get her spinal nerve stimulator installed next Friday. So we're looking forward to that day. And she's still beset with multiple issues. And so the good thing is uh, we do have Avini that helps her tremendously on a daily basis. I don't know how much I've shared. I do know how much I've shared about the cell defender and the mushrooms and what they have done. So it's fun talking about those because that story began in January of 2023 when Barbara and I went by appointment to visit her nephrologist. And he walked in the room and after having viewed her blood test results, basically announced that you're in third stage renal failure. And he didn't offer any suggestions, no change in medications or anything. And a little chit chat, and he was gone. And it was right after that, within a few days, that Ed Kwaski called me. He had not been friends since 1995. And of course, I take his calls any time of the day or night, whenever he calls. That's been that way for, what, 25 years, I guess, or so. Anyway, Ed called, and we talked late at night. And he told me about something that he was involved in, and he's on a roll there telling me all about it. And he told me that he had a website. And while he's talking, I looked up his website and was reading a little bit along with what he was saying. I got to one point, I said, Ed, what do these words mean? And I read to him from the screen. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm talking about asking you what these words mean. In a sense, I'm not quite sure what the reference is there. He said, are you in my back office? I said, well, yeah, I am. He said, well, I said, all I needed you to tell me is just answer the question, Ed. And that's the kind of conversational stuff Ed and I do regularly anyway. Just tell me what's on your mind. So he told me, he said, you signing up? I said, well, yeah, I'm trying to. You just give me the answer to the question. So anyway, and that's how I got started with Avini. And of course, a few days later, the products arrived. And the reason I did that was because of what the doctor said about Barbara and what Eddie told me about how they worked and what they did. I just wish that I had them 4 or 5 years ago when our daughter was dying and didn't pass because of kidney failure. And I wish I had known about this. We could have likely saved her life. But anyway, 6 months later, in July of 23, we went back to see the same doctor. And Barbara had been on the products for 6 months. And so when we walked in the room, when he walked in the room, after his introductions, he said, I'd like to read to you from these 2 sheets of paper. And one of them was her blood test results from January. The other was the ones we had done that week in July, so 6 months later. And he said, this is a dramatic reversal of what you had in January. I want to know what happened. What did you do? And Barbara, of course, had no idea what she had done. So he said, you must know it had to have been a major event in your life to make this much of a change. I want to know what it is. And she said, I don't know. Ask him. So the doctor turned to me and asked me the same question. Do you know what it was? I said, absolutely. He said, well, will you tell me? I said, sure. So I told him. And he had no idea about it. And I didn't get any kind of a confirmation from him, except he said, well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. The same doctor we saw in October, she was in the hospital for another event. She has multiple things, but he walked into the room and I had a stack of papers that had that testimonial on. I had about 20 copies. And he walked in the room and saw that stack of papers and reached over and picked one up and said, what is this about? I said, this is a story about you. This is what happened with you a few months ago. Do you see anything different from exactly what I've written there? And I did not mention him by name in that story. And he said, no. And before I could say anything else to him, I was going to say to him, wouldn't you like for all of your patients to get the same type of results? But before I could say those words, a nurse came in and physically took him by the arm and said, "We need you right now in room number," whatever it was. So I did not get to ask that question of him then, but I did ask him a couple of days later. And his answer was yes, but he didn't have time to talk. He had to go. So we'll have another event coming up with him before long. And I'll try to dance on it a little bit more and maybe give him some additional information about what's going on with her health. Because this stuff works. But I have another testimonial that happened just yesterday. Our daughter-in-law came over to pick up our most beautiful grandbaby on the planet, and at 5 months old. Anyway, she came over to pick her up, and she had gone to a chiropractor's appointment. And when she came in, she was holding her hand in an awkward position. Looked to me like she didn't want anything to bump her thumb. And I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yeah, I need some help getting the baby to the car." I said, "I can do that, but what's your problem with your thumb?" She said, "Well, she'd gone to the doctor and she told me all about his conversation with her. So what did he offer you for help?" She said, "Well, nothing really, other than some pain meds." I said, "Is it hurting you now?" And she said, "It really is." I said, "Would you like some help with that?" "Oh, no, 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 no." I said, "What kind of answer is that?" She said, "You want to take it and pull it?" And I said, "No, no, I don't want to do that. Here's what I do want to do. Let me show you." So I reached over and got a bottle of, excuse me, Plus Relief. I said, "If you'll put your thumb out here and your hand out here, let me just put a couple of drops on there." And I very gently put about 3 or 4 drops right on the bottom of her thumb joint. And with my index finger, I just moved it around and not putting any pressure on it, all on the underside and all up and down that thumb and up towards the wrist a little bit. And while I was doing that, I was just waiting for the stuff to dry in so it wouldn't, drop off or be slick or something on her body. Anyway, she said, "I feel it working already." We're talking about, I told her, I said, "It's going to work within 2 to 3 minutes. It will be active." And she said, "I feel it already." And so when she got home, I called and said, "How does your thumb feel now?" She said, "There's no pain." I said, let me assure you, it did not cure anything, but it will keep pain out of your body. It's not limited to your thumb. And she's a nurse. She works in the hospital, and she has to have busy hands a lot. So that's the main 2 things I want you all to know tonight. I love this.
Wow.
It simply works.
Alan, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a story too, but I'm going to wait till next week to share similar to that with a relative that with the Plus Relief. So, all of us have stories. All of us probably know someone that is has that P word going on somewhere in their body, and someone like our guest tonight, Joe, with that I couldn't get over it, Chip, the numbers of people with their kidney disease. Wow. Just what,
It's
100,000?
really common, and it's, it really is pretty much guaranteed, and it doesn't take long because of the way it just takes some of the load off. And I was thinking that, I loved what Alan said, wouldn't you like to get that result for all your patients? But then I had a devil made me do it thought, to go up to when the guy first asked, "Okay, what did she do?" What if Alan would have said, I've been sworn to secrecy. I can't tell you. I'm working with a biochemist. We think this is worth millions, maybe billions of dollars on the world market. And we're the only ones that know about it so far. I mean, you've seen it, but I can't let you tell anything about it. Don't tell anybody what you've seen here today. I can't tell you how we did it.
Yeah, that's what we need to tell.
That's a
Start
better
telling
answer than mine, Chip. You think faster than I do.
Well, I was just thinking, you think about some of the miracles that Jesus did. And what did he always tell the people? Don't tell anybody. Don't tell them what you've seen here today. Well, what did they do? Right? It's like you got to play the flip side sometimes. The devil made me do it. I was thinking about that when Alan was speaking. I was so tickled, when you said, "Wouldn't you like this result for all your patients?" And ultimately, but maybe even in the conversation when you guys do talk, can you imagine what you and I have now seen with my wife, what that's worth, if indeed that's transferable to everybody? that's got a kidney problem, which by the way, it is. And then you probably just send this recording. There you
Mhm.
go.
Absolutely.
And the beauty is it's not limited to just kidneys. It's so many
No.
more things that it can do.
Nope.
It just so
Every
happens to be
single
our topic
metabolic
tonight,
process.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Every organ system. And
Yeah.
I do admire Ed and Alan. I'm not sure I'd have the nerve to approach either one of them. So thank God they showed up through Kyle Helm. Thank you, Kyle, for your work. But now they're here. I love them. So thank you very much for being with us, you guys. The same way with the rest of you. You know, the qualifications of the people on this call, the history of what you've done, what you're doing in your lives is pretty doggone high level. I think it was cool that Joe said I was other people's chicken list.
Yeah.
So nobody told me.
Yeah.
Interesting way of saying it, right? I'm going to quiet myself again.
Yes, that is right. He was the chicken list. Wow. So if you have a chicken list, remember it could be somebody like Joe that needs you. So I just want to let you all go on and have a blessed night. It was a wonderful call. Enjoy the next couple days with your families. If you with your families, it's a special time. Easter is my favorite holiday, so I just want you to take the time to be quiet and spend some time with yourself and your family. And I'm just going to be grateful. All have such a grateful heart. I can see it on all your faces that we're all blessed to be here with Avini. And I thank each and every one of you. And Eddie Kwaski, thank you for sharing Avini with me.
Christine, I just want to shout out my guest, Stephanie Womack. She is my YEA admin and she's here tonight with us. Thank you, Stephanie, for being our guest tonight.
Thank you for having me and inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
We're glad that you're here as well. And next time you come back, we want to see you on camera with us.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, you will.
All right. All right.
And Jamie, great to see you too.
Yes.
All right.
Bless.
Thank you.
And see you all next
Bye.
week.
Bye,
Happy
y'all.
Easter.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Happy Easter.
Bye.
Happy
Bye,
Easter.
everybody.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Thanks.